Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me Stern. This is normally where I'd introduce you to the corrupted Pokemon ARG that we've been going through for the past couple weeks, but today I wanted to introduce you to the beautiful region of Kostawes as we prepare for our Pokemon journey to begin. First off, let's take a trip right outside of Fresco Town to the Pokemon Research Facility.
Hi, sorry, didn't see you there. Pardon the mess. My name is Professor Sago, but people call me the Pokemon Professor. This world is full of exciting and powerful creatures that you'll meet along your journey. But before you can venture out into the tall grasses and wild world, let's get you situated with a starter Pokemon.
Yes, it's that moment that every 10-year-old in the Kostawes region waits for. The day that you can begin your Pokemon adventure and choose your starter Pokemon. First up is our water starter. This little guy is one of my absolute favorites, and if you've been a fan of the channel for a little bit, or even just kind of saw the introduction today, this guy might look a little familiar to you. This is the Pokemon that I've been using as my profile picture for the channel, as well as for the Discord and other different outcroppings of where I'm at. It's just a favorite of mine. It's our water starter, and while I've mentioned before, grass type is the best starter type, I just kind of fell in love with this design. The whole concept is that I wanted to go with something that was shrimpy and just small. I've said before that something that I look at with Pokemon evolution is not just going bigger and grander, but the idea of hidden potential, of what a Pokemon could be hidden away in this previous form. This Pokemon really emphasizes that, as do kind of all of the starters. Given that the Kostawes region is heavily inspired by old Hollywood and the pursuit of fame and fortune, I wanted this to have this starting idea, this idea that it's just fearful and scared, and that's just the personality of this water starter, and it can grow into something stupendous. The theming around my water starter is Wild West and country type of movies. The idea of this scared little kid eventually evolving into a big cowboy type of character. Think Clint Eastwood or John Wayne. Think of those old classic movies where you have the hero who has to go through their journey of starting out as the reluctant hero and becoming the sheriff or the town mascot or what have you. There's a ton of different movies like that, and Wild West is a big inspiration to me when it comes to just story writing and character development. So I wanted to capture that in a Pokemon. And again, while grass was my favorite, I decided to put that on the water starter, and very quickly, this thing became not just my favorite design that I've done, not just my favorite story element for what they can become, but enough that I said I want to kind of base my entire channel around this. So this is some secret kind of the Thesterninator lore that you're getting with the design of this water starter, and I'm pretty happy with it. I know I've said that before, but I am. So this is Shrimpane. The name comes from the terms in pain and shrimp. Again, very reluctant Pokemon. If you take this as your starter, you're going to have a little bit of a fight against you as you try to teach it to battle and be confident. But maybe you're the type who wants a starter that exemplifies not what they could be, but what they are. Maybe that fiery passion that makes you want to become a trainer is going to be the thing that fuels you through not just your adventure, but through your life. With that, I wanted to create a fire starter that encapsulates that idea, that rough and rowdy type of energy. For the inspiration of movie-wise and movie genres and how I wanted to portray that in this design, I went with movies like Fast and the Furious. I went with movies like James Bond. These heavy action and adventure type of movies that really just go above and beyond what it is to be an action film. Think race cars and traveling around the world. Think parachuting in a tank out of a jet plane. And that's kind of where we're going with this design. But for the moment, this Pokemon is very eager to start that adventure, but doesn't quite have all the things that it needs. Again, think of James Bond prior to being prepped on what they're looking for in the adventure, prior to getting all of their fun gadgets. They still have that drive to be an adventurer and to be a spy or to be a race car driver or whatever it is that Fast and the Furious does now, but just doesn't have the right tools to accomplish that task. So that's this Pokemon, and I went with kind of a bull because I still wanted to capture that Chinese zodiac type of motif that we've seen in a lot of fire type starters, but obviously has been broken with Pokemon like Fuecoco. I just wanted to use that kind of as a template to go by. I found as an artist that having a template or a prompt is the best thing that you can do for yourself because it gives you a starting point beyond just infinite nothingness. Sometimes that infinite nothingness can be perfect for getting you going, but in this case, I wanted to kind of match the energy that we've seen in other starters, especially of the fire type variety. So I went with something out of the Chinese zodiac, went with an ox or a bull, and utilize that. If you've watched a lot of my other episodes and videos in the series, you'll know that I've drawn quite a few different bulls and rabbits and bears, oh my. And this one I had to make different. Luckily, this one I drew a long time ago. This design actually first appeared with me and this recording of drawing way back when I kind of first started getting more into posting regularly. So it's been around for a while. This predates a lot of my other bull-based designs and ox-based designs like in our Gravity Falls or our astrology series. So yeah, this is an oldie, but a goodie. So meet your fire starter, Caflambe, the name coming from calf, flame, and enflambe, meaning to be served on fire. So it is a fiery little temper and a fiery little energy that if you're a trainer who's looking to just kind of bulldoze through your first couple gyms and just become the champion, this is the guy for you. I'll be honest, this next design kind of cheats the system. I drew this guy a long time ago, and actually if you head back all the way to June on this channel, you'll see the full line for this Pokemon. This is our grass starter. Again, the best type of starter, but I ended up going with water for this series, but still one of my absolute favorites. The design elements behind this Pokemon and its eventual growth are old-timey 30s style movies. Think of Buster Keaton types, the black and white films that are just kind of slapstick comedy, maybe even stuff like the Three Stooges. A lot of these old black and white style comedies and movies that actually I kind of grew up watching a lot. I don't know, I always felt connected to them. I thought they were really funny and I just loved them. So I went with this old vaudevillian style character, and while it may be difficult to see now, I guarantee you'll see it as it progresses. Again, you'll see a lot of that in that June video, but we're going to be carrying a lot of that stuff over into these videos as well as we continue to progress through the Kostawes region. The idea is it has this little pompadour, this little poof of hair on its head, very much like the child stars of those days where you would kind of go in your Sunday best and hope that you could get cast in the movie. So he has his little almost onesie style outfit that I just fully love. He really looks like what you'd picture when you think of an old-timey cartoon or old-timey movie and a baby character, everything short of a bonnet. It also has this little wrinkly tail to showcase that while it is all put together, it absolutely underneath it all is just a wild little kid. The emotion that I wanted to capture here was this lack of confidence, whereas Shrimpane has just general fear and Caflambe has this egotistical drive. This one is a lack of confidence, which growing into that performer motif, as we'll see in those later iterations of this Pokemon, it's something that it needs to learn to adapt to and grow to. Like I've said, and like I'll continue to say, I think making Pokemon evolutions is not just about making them bigger, stronger, adding guns, adding muscle, adding mass, but more so, how can you start with a potential and show that that potential has carried all the way through to the final form? And I think these Pokemon, these three, are a big showcase of potential, of what they can be. And I think starting with an idea of what I wanted them to become really helped in the process. Thinking, okay, I know what I'm gonna have them be. I know that they're gonna be an action star, a Wild West star, and a vaudevillian actor. But what are they now? What do they start as, and how does that evolution grow throughout their different phases? The other thing that I wanted to fix, which again, we'll see in a later episode, or you can see in that other episode with this Pokemon, is I wanted to make middle evolution seem fun. I'm often so disappointed in the middle evolution. They feel like these vague preteen type stages, and I know that that's the idea, but I wanted to do something different. And so here is Oppity. The name comes from opossum and pity. It's a Pokemon that's based again on those childhood actors and the type that you pity and say, oh man, hopefully they'll be able to make it, hopefully they'll get their part, but we'll have to wait and see. But these are hardly the only Pokemon that you'll run into on your journey. So let's venture to Route 1 and see what other Pokemon we can find. These Pokemon will be based on the bark beetle, the California woodpecker, and the native raccoon. All Pokemon that are based on animals that are commonly found throughout the West Coast. But before we move on, I want to showcase some of the art from our Discord server. This month for Halloween, we're doing a different prompt every week focused around spooky season, such as Celestial Dice's 3-stage Pokemon that you can see here. We also have Cheese Please with Pumpist and Ectoplast. Really cool Pokemon designs that I'm blown away by. Isaac RSTOP decided to go with a Slugma and a Macargo variation. Jacorbo created Larvaism, as well as Plasmoth, while JT created this really cool little cellular Pokemon. K-Rogue, whose art we've seen before, showcases this 3-stage Dragon Fakemon, which is insane, and you can find more of their stuff at Kenny is Slitherpuff on Instagram. Lavender Q also created these mobs, and Liam, again another artist whose art we've seen before in other videos, created this amazing 3-stage Wobbuffet line. All while Obsidian Fox created Philoplasm. And Poison Gym Leader created this regional Rhyunicluse. Sunny D Not the Drink gave us this 2-stage form. And of course, Taro the Silly created Dectawitch. Very cool design. And the Damn Stylist created Pergarol, all while Wendigo King was creating this amazing Pokemon. And bringing up the rear, Jackoforge created this Solosis line, which is just amazing. You guys always go above and beyond with these type of little contests, and I can't thank you enough. But let's hop right back into our Kostawes walkthrough with our early route bug Pokemon. This design actually isn't based on an animal that is native to the West Coast, but instead an invasive species, which is known for decimating trees. If you ever come through the West Coast, specifically Yosemite and areas like that, you'll come across these large areas of just woodchip that are laying about the forested areas. These have fallen to the bark beetle, again an invasive species brought in that just devastates trees within days, and I wanted to capture that. While it's not native to the area, it is something that is prevalent throughout. So I wanted to create a Pokemon that felt like it could do that. Again, a lot of this is about what they're able to accomplish as they evolve. Early route Pokemon, as well as your starters, are all very much about holding on to something until it becomes viable. And that's this guy to a T. It's a little almost pillbug shaped Pokemon that just latches onto trees, and I wanted to give that kind of the whole vibe of the Pokemon. So it has these pincer-esque type mandibles. The idea is that it uses those to kind of drill into trees and latch on, using the coloring of its back and the coloring of its antenna and legs to just appear as a part of the tree itself, almost like an odd growth or a knot that you'll find on trees that are just older. So it hides very, very well, a master of camouflage, so that it can eat and just tear down these trees. For some reason, it has something against them. Sudowoodo would not last long here because those mandibles are strong enough to even cut through stone. And if it looks like a tree and acts like a tree, this Pokemon's gonna try and eat it. I wanted to give it kind of that brownish texture. There's a lot of different types of trees in the area, but I thought if I give it that grayish color with a lot of birch that we have in the area, it may not represent quite as well, so I decided to go with your typical arky brown. Not much more left to say about this guy. It's very much a Pokemon that is a message on forest devastation caused by just invasive species. I've seen numerous trees that have been historic or important to an area, whether they be in a garden or they be in kind of the center square of a little township spot of town, suddenly have to cut down those trees and remove them because they've been infected by the bark beetle. We have entire organizations that's whole job is to look for where the bark beetle may be and to try and track where they're going. That way we can try and stop this invasive species before it does any more harm to the ecosystem. Speaking of which, the ecosystem is a large part of this design and a large part of these early route Pokemon, which you'll see in. So without much further ado, here is Chipeedle. It is a devastating little bug and one that's sure to make a good spot on your team, especially for going up against a lot of grass type trainers. He has a special ability that I am not quite sure of yet. Let me know down in the comments what you think this Pokemon's ability should be based on the lore that you've learned about it. I'm super excited to see what you guys come up with. Maybe give me a dex entry or two. I don't know. I always just love hearing from you guys on that type of stuff. But moving on to the rest of this ecosystem, let's take a look at the prime adversary of Chipeedle, and that would be this woodpecker Pokemon. Woodpeckers are prevalent throughout the West Coast, and if you ever come and visit, you'll hear them more often than not. That knock, knock, knock on telephone poles and large structures of wood, trees, any of that. These guys just are noisy and loud. And I know that we already have a woodpecker Pokemon in Trumbeak, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I was super disappointed to see that it evolves into a toucan. Don't get me wrong, I love toucans, and Toucanon is one of my favorite Pokemon designs, but I just felt like we moved away from woodpecker way too fast to go for what was believed to be a quote-unquote cooler bird. Toucanons are cool, but I think woodpeckers are cool too, and I was disappointed that it ended up just being kind of a starter and middle evolution to become something completely different. I know that that's not unheard of in Pokemon, but I wanted a true, honest-to-goodness woodpecker final form that I feel like we didn't get. So I went ahead and created my own, and that's where we get this guy. The idea of this region is about fame and fortune and what it takes to become a modern celebrity, all in contrast to the ecosystem and the nature of the region itself. So a lot of these Pokemon you'll find have relation to one another. For example, this Pokemon hunts down Chipetal. Chipetal hides itself as trees, and this Pokemon loves to drill at trees, often getting its beak stuck in these petrified stumps while it's trying to hunt down those Chipetal. Don't get me wrong, it loves a good taste of birch or elm or what have you, and I'm not talking about the Pokemon professors. But whenever it comes across a Chipetal, that is a rare treat that they get to enjoy, so the youngins will spend a lot of time searching for them, almost like candy. And that's where I got this idea for this ecosystem aspect. Our early route Pokemon all kind of work together just to exist. Whereas one may tear down trees that harbor these bird Pokemon, the bird Pokemon retaliates by eating the bugs that eat the trees. It all kind of works out in this beautiful little cycle. Happy for you to meet Chipek. Chipek is our woodpecker Pokemon, our early route bird, and if you were to catch one, I'm super excited for you because it's one of my favorites that I've gotten to design. Let me know what you think in the comments down below for some Dex entries or some potential Pokemon abilities that you think that this guy may have. Again, always super pumped by what you guys have. I love just his beak stuck in that piece of wood, and boy, it becomes something so cool and so fun as we get to see it evolve. Next up comes our early route mammal, which used to be called our early route rodent, but got changed as some of those formulations ended up getting mixed around as we continued to grow and expand in the world of Pokemon. But this is our early route mammal. I based this off of a raccoon, and while raccoons are known to be bandits, I thought, well, why not just go with that? Low-hanging fruit, right? Speaking of low-hanging fruit, the way that I see this Pokemon working into the ecosystem is that while following Chipetal, Chipek will actually get its beak stuck in these planks of wood and will, rather than pecking at the wood of the tree, will begin slamming into it with this hammer-style piece of wood, knocking a lot of branches and a lot of leaves and a lot of fruit and berries loose from the trees. As that happens, this Pokemon is quick to come in and gather that loose fruit. It is a Pokemon of taking advantage of any situation. So as the Chipek goes looking for this other Pokemon, this one will be quick at its heels to try and make sure that it can get while the getting's good. I designed its tail to almost mimic a burglar with a sack of money over its shoulder. Again, thinking of those old-timey type of movies where the bad guy always had to be shown to be the bad guy by wearing a mask. Always had to be shown that they are robbing people by having a sack full of money with a dollar sign on the outside. So I went with that same type of energy here. Its tail becomes engorged as it begins to load up on berries and trinkets that it can find. Sometimes even Pokeballs and Pokecoins. The way I see it is when you battle this Pokemon, you may find yourself getting a little bit of extra money. You may find yourself getting other items randomly as it drops these and attempts to flee or as it's captured. I had a ton of fun with it, and me and some friends actually workshopped what this Pokemon would look like, what it would evolve into, and boy, it was a ton of fun. It was a fun exercise in just kind of how wild we could get with the ideas before having to kind of forcibly rein it back in. So you're going to get to see the most wild aspects to this Pokemon as it evolves. Again, I'm not certain if this one's on the Instagram, but it should be. and the previous iterations too. A lot of these designs that you see on here are kind of redraws of ones that existed on there. So when you look, you may find stuff that's former versions, how the evolution of this design changed. The more often that I look at these designs, the more often that I find I want to change something, or I have a new idea that better captures what I'm looking for in the concept. And that's okay. As artists, our jobs are kind of to grow and to evolve with the art that we're creating. So often I'll look at art that I did maybe even 6 months ago and say, what was I thinking? That's part of the fear of creating this YouTube channel, is there's this living encyclopedia of stuff that I've drawn that I can just look back at later and say, what was I thinking? What did I do? Why did I make those decisions the way that I did? Find joy in what you're creating, whether that be a joy that you find at the moment or in the future designs. So this is Ragank, a play on the words raccoon, rag, and yank. So this Pokemon is very likely to come up and just kind of steal from you. If you find this thing in the tall grass, just know you didn't stumble upon it. It came across you, and I think it's a ton of fun. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Super pumped about this guy. And with that, that brings us to the end of our early route Pokemon.
Adventure awaits you around every bend. This is just the first step in your Pokemon journey, but will not be the last, as this region will prove to be full of twists, turns, and surprises.
Thank you, Professor Sego. That will be all. This adventure is brought to you by Porico, a proud sponsor of the Pokemon League. Allow me as Porico President and CEO Thesterninator to welcome you into what is sure to be an exhilarating experience. So until next time, it sounds like I know where to find you.
Hey, so just a side thing, by the way. Last week, I did some shoutouts for art in our Five Nights at Freddy's video, and I accidentally attributed some art to the wrong person. So whereas I attributed some art to Goopy the Slime, that art was actually created by Evan the Frosty on our Discord server. Just wanted to clear that up, make sure it's all good, and yeah, so just heads up, that's what happened there. A little confusing, a lot of art to get through, but that's no excuse. Should have gotten the name right. Sorry, Evan. Hope you forgive me.